am now a 19-year-old guy who for the past 3 to 4 years has experienced a lot of unexplainable things, a few of which I'll talk about here, whether for answers or just to share with you. These experiences don't have any ties that I'm aware of, so I'll recite them chronologically. My first run-ins with supernatural occurrences started when I was 15 or 16, using a Ouija board with my friends. I've never been the kind to worry about rules, but something about the unknown signifies to me that rules must be followed. So even at this age, I was very cautious, or so I thought. While originally using the board for fun with my friends, I started to become more interested in the perpetual knowledge the entity could indulge me in, turning it from fun into a deep obsession in a short span of time. My friends noticed the turn too, as it affected all of us, and we became hungry for more things the entities could tell us. We started asking about the future, if I would get caught sneaking out that night, if they knew loved ones who'd passed away, if they had any answers on what our secrets were, just stupid things like that. It was so surreal, but it was happening right in front of us. The planchette would move erratically and aggressively, with certain combinations of friends using it and others observing. It would stop working when someone certain was there, and maybe was a skeptic on the whole idea of this even being viable. The entities would encourage certain combos of my friends to use the board at certain times, moving faster and clearer than when others used it. A lot of my friends became interested in it, with 3 or 4 of us being more on the obsessed level. This is where it gets strange. We start seeing smiley faces randomly appearing around us in random locations, sometimes drawn into dust on old furniture in one of our basements, etc. They were differently drawn, which signaled to us who was drawing. There were about 8 main entities that spoke to us. At least that's what we determined from the info we received, but only 3 faces. One was a smiley face with eyes as lines, and one of them was a face with eyes as dots. We were told the dotted eyes were from an entity that called itself Harry, short for Harriet. We were told that the entity frowned upon their full name and preferred to be considered a tomboy, but identified itself as a young girl. The other face was supposedly drawn by one of my friend's past relatives. I won't reveal the name, but they made themselves known to my friend, and we had no reason to doubt it. Now the third one started appearing after introducing one of my other friends to the board. We used it in his house, downstairs in his room. Now this was weird. The whole experience in his room using it with him was strange because of the energy. The energy in the room was different that time, which I now recognize as the dormant part of me signaling negativity. But at the time, we all just felt the temperature drop noticeably, tingles down our shoulder blades, and attitudes changing from excited to anxious. My friend whom we introduced to the board that day started getting extremely angry and told us off, saying the board was fake and it doesn't work, and commanded us to put it away and he never wants to see it again. We all look at each other but do as he says since we are in his home. Everything else proceeding on that day went normally. The next day my other friends and I are together and ask my friend whose house we were at last night to come to IHOP with us. He agrees with a simple, sure. We pick him up from his house to be greeted by a whole different person. Disheveled hair and clothes, never once cracked a smile, bags under his eyes, just completely out of character. He barely speaks with us as we eat and we start to get concerned about his well-being. One of my friends asks him, "What's wrong?" And he snaps at her, tells her to stop asking him questions, to just leave him alone. At that point, alarm bells are going off in all of our heads. There's something not right about this, but we don't think about the board being the center of the problem. I look over at the window which he is sitting by, and I see a very strange smiley face drawn on it. Not strange in looks, but the moment I looked at it, I was hit with a wave of nausea and horror, seemingly coming from nowhere. This smile face had lines, but horizontally, not vertically. I pointed out to my friends. Their faces go instantly white, and I know they feel the same way I did when I saw it. One of my friends was terrified to the point that he just left and didn't want to be around the board anymore. To this day, he says it's because he doesn't believe in it, but up until that point he was obsessed and attached to all of it. That I know it's just denial. After he leaves, the rest of us leave as well to head to one of my other friends' houses to calm down. We get into the car, and we just feel my friend's energy turning into aggressiveness and hostility. So I offer him the front seat to try and calm him down. I really couldn't think of another way at the time. The moment that the heater turns on and the front windows start clearing up, an image in the dew on the windshield just doesn't clear from it. And I didn't take a picture of it, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't have it by now. But it was right in front of that friend, and it was the most horrific thing I've ever seen. It was like a face with its mouth wide open, eyes closed, throwing something up from its mouth, but the face wasn't human. It was sort of mangled, looked to be under great pain. With things coming out of its mouth, something tells me that it was blood, but I can't be sure, as it wasn't too detailed on the windshield. After we saw the face, we are blown away, at a loss for words, and my friend in shotgun just opens the door and leans out and pukes everywhere. He didn't even eat what he ordered at IHOP, but everything just came up. It was absolutely terrifying, and we don't know what to do until he asks to be brought home. We say yes, kind of glad we can separate ourselves from that energy at the moment. After that, we go to our friend's house, but keep seeing the new smiley face everywhere, and in greater numbers than we see the other ones. For the next few weeks after that incident, we shy away from the board, using it less and less frequently. The whole time my friend falling into a deeper hole, starting from texts from his parents, wondering if we knew why he was so aggressive, because he's been yelling and screaming at them for minor things, to him sending pictures to us of him crying and begging for us to help him because he feels so lonely. He keeps saying something about she keeps telling me I'm worthless. She says I should die. She says you guys are talking about me. If you knew the guy, you'd know that's so unlike him. He always was a goofy guy and loved to joke and play pranks on people, etc. And he'd never let any living being affect him verbally like that. It started to become more void of emotion, and anything that would signify he was even remotely human, rather than cries for help at that point. He would just send us random quotes and random numbers that didn't mean anything to us at the time. He would detest light and need it to be dark in his room, and at a point begged us to give him the Ouija board, telling us he changed his mind and he needed to do it again. He wouldn't eat or drink anything, saying to us that he no longer needed it and that something else was providing him sustenance. To which we then thought he was possessed. He never used words like that, and he's never serious, and usually anything he said was a joke or playful. We call a church in our area, and they told us if he wasn't willing to receive help, they couldn't give it besides through prayer and protection through us. They told us if he was abandoning his health, then we should contact a counseling agency or law enforcement instead, if he was a danger to himself or others. They also told us we could contact his parents to give the pastor permission to bless his house, but we declined because his parents didn't know, and he made it very clear that bad things would happen if we contacted his family about his well-being. There was no real conclusion to this physically. We didn't go to his house and dump holy water on his head when he was sleeping, but it concluded in a different way. My friends and I during this whole experience had been seeing each other in our dreams, almost as if we could communicate, but without words, mainly with emotions, if that makes sense. I remember having a dream a few nights after contacting the church and seeing all of my friends there surrounding our now okay friend. We were all aware of each other without really looking at each other, but I knew it was us, and I knew the guy in the middle of us was him. It was strange, as though something dark around him was beckoning us to move away, but there was also pressure at my back telling me to step forward, almost like a battle amidst a dream. I noticed in my dream the one friend who now denies everything that happened stepped away and completely turns his attention elsewhere. But me and two of my other friends persist on stepping towards our friend as if we needed to. I remember putting an immense amount of effort into stepping forward, and once I did, everything was just light. Not necessarily bright, but it was blinding light that you couldn't see. I woke up sweating and immediately got a FaceTime from one of my friends, who had also taken a step forward, asking if I just had a dream, me saying yes, us freaking out. We contacted our other friend and got the same response, and again called the denial friend, who was at the time still sleeping, unbothered. Next day we get a text via the Snapchat group chat from our possessed friend, and he was acting completely normal, like nothing happened. He said, "What are you guys talking about?" Apparently he either didn't remember the last couple weeks or was hiding it, because he said we were all crazy and that he was fine the whole time. He narrowed it down to him joking about it, which we knew was a lie. Even his parents knew the difference and texted us saying thank you for whatever you did. To this day, Everything is normal. We are still friends, and it definitely brought us closer together. Except for the denial friend. He's no longer around. So what do you guys think happened? I have way more stories to sort through, but I felt this one I should share first. In a different post in the future, I'll talk about more of my experiences with the board and what it taught me. I have no way to prove credibility, but I promise you guys, I wouldn't spend my time writing a fictional ghost story. This is all how I remember it, and I'm still friends with the people who were with me then, and they can vouch. If you choose not to believe it, then that's up to you. But anyone who's shared a similar experience, I trust will know this is the truth. I still have questions about it to this day. If there's anything you want explained further, just let me know.
I have done some ghost hunting and still upon occasion like to seek out the paranormal, and boy did I find exactly what I was looking for one night. There were rumors about a house in a neighboring town that was so scary that nobody ever made it completely through except one person, and he is now in an insane asylum. Once I found out where the house was, my buddy and I loaded up in the car and took off to check it out. We got there just as it was getting dark. The house was a 2-story home, but it was big. No wonder nobody made it completely through. It would take a couple hours if you wanted to explore and look for anything interesting. The house was obviously old. It was a light blue, but the paint was chipping off and it just looked like an abandoned house. A lot of the windows were boarded up, and some windows still had the glass, and some windows were broken. We walked up to the porch and found the front door to be unlocked. No surprise, because the window closest to the door was broken and it would have been really easy to break in. We opened the door and stepped inside. I was expecting to see a lot of old broken furniture, beer cans, graffiti all over the wall. Surprisingly, we found no furniture or garbage. I guess the one advantage of a house being so scary that you can't make it through without running out is it keeps the parties out. The first room we walked into was the living room, as is most cases with a house. The room was smaller than I expected with a house so big. There was a fireplace that was in a surprisingly good shape, and we slowly walked through the room, stopping every couple of steps and listening for anything out of the ordinary. As we approached the kitchen area, we heard a noise in the living room. It sounded like someone starting a fire. We quickly looked back into the room to find a fire in the fireplace. We knew right then and there that this place lived up to the hype. We considered getting out of there, but we promised ourselves before we arrived that we were going to push forward no matter what happened. So we proceeded into the kitchen. The kitchen was a very big room compared to the size of the living room and compared to an average kitchen of an average house. Again, there wasn't any furnishings in the kitchen either. And as we walked through the kitchen, we made sure to pay close attention to what was going on in the living room. Every few steps we would stop and look back to make sure nothing else was happening. We didn't see or hear anything other than the crackle of the fire in the fireplace. So we proceeded. As we left the kitchen and entered the hallway, we started to hear pounding on the walls coming from both sides of the hallway. We walked single file even though the hallway was wide enough for the both of us. The banging continued, and as we reached the end of the hallway, we heard a voice. It was very difficult to make out what the voice was saying, so we stopped walking so we could concentrate on the voice. The voice was barely louder than a whisper, and as we listened, it would grow louder and then back down to a whisper. Finally, we were able to make out what the voice was saying. The voice was calling out to us by name. It knew our names, and it said in a woman's voice, "If you continue, you will find more than you seek. If you continue, you will find more than you seek." And as it said it the second time, we heard a loud crash like a window busting, and we heard the voice scream. The scream was like nothing I have ever heard before. It was so piercing that I still wake up at night hearing that scream. We covered our ears, and as I turned to look at my friend, I watched the wall of the hallway tear with claw marks like a bear or cougar had just taken its claws to the wall. We ran out of the house as fast as we possibly could, never to return again. And if you enjoyed this experience, check out my podcast Brave the Basement, where we cover all things paranormal.
I am 20, and I have experienced sleep paralysis and involuntary astral projection for many years. For context, I have also had many paranormal experiences throughout my life. When I became a teenager, I had so many experiences and spiritual attacks that I just asked God to stop them. For the most part, I stopped having these attacks. However, lately I've started to have paranormal experiences and strange dreams again. Then today happened. I had work tonight at 6 p.m, so I decided to take a quick nap around 2:30 so I could wake up by 4. Although I closed my eyes, I was never able to truly fall asleep. At some point, I became paralyzed in a sense that I couldn't move my body. However, I was fully awake and I could feel my room around me as I was aware of my body. I then began to dream. I was in a car with my dad and he was dropping me off at school. The dream started out normal and we had a very nice conversation, and it was totally normal, which should have been a red flag since I hate my dad and I haven't seen him in years. He then turned to me and said that something very bad was going to happen to my boyfriend's sister. When I looked at him, I saw a monster demon behind his eyes. I still saw him, but I saw the demon in his face as well. I jumped out of the car and ran to the building and was screaming. It chased me, but was extremely erratic and didn't move like any human would. I got to the library and saw this girl I knew from school. She asked me if I was okay, and I started to explain that I was being chased when I looked into her eyes and saw a demon too. I got up to run and saw that everyone around me suddenly had demons in their eyes. They all started to snarl and make scary noises. I decided to run. As I ran, the building turned from a normal school building into a building that was decrepit. Once I realized I was surrounded by demons, the school building fell away, and I no longer saw people or a pristine building, but rather demons in a run-down building. The building still looked like the school, but the colors, they'd been inverted, and it was in great disrepair. I came across teachers, and they were holding babies. I thought they were normal, so I ran up to them for help. However, when I saw their faces, both the teachers and their babies were demonic. One of the women came up to me and started to snarl, and she said she wanted me to become trapped in this world, and I wouldn't be able to wake back up or escape. The longer I looked at this woman, she started to contort and become more demon-like. She slithered on the floor and moved jerkily. She started screaming to me that she wanted to claim my soul. I ran full force from the building, and when I got outside, I noticed that the parking lot and woods that looked normal in my dreams were now a wasteland. In place of cars were mounds of garbage. I realized I had no way out and I was trapped. I hid under a tarp and tried to be very, very still. I was petrified and I couldn't breathe. At this point, a boy came up to me and started to tell me that I couldn't hide and I was going to be trapped in this world forever. He then disappeared, and I saw an exit to this wasteland. I ran through these gates, and as soon as I did, I woke up. In the dream, the gates were just illuminated by light. Once exiting this dream, I was able to move my body again. I was never truly asleep. It was as though I was paralyzed and had a VR headset on that I couldn't escape from. Does anyone know how to stop this from happening again? This scared me so badly, and I don't want to have any more paranormal experiences or dreams like this. Any help would be appreciated.
I just want to say thank you to APHELION and Miss Creepy Tales for making this video awesome. Make sure you check out their channels, there will be links in the description down below. Show them some love. Thanks for watching.